The Trump administration says it is now withholding all federal child care funding to the entire state.
Who they accuse of defrauding child nutrition, autism, and housing stability programs.
Community on edge. There are roughly 80,000 Somalis living here in the area.
4:22 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The city is buried under a brutal winter frost that has pushed the temperature to 25 degrees below zero. At this temperature, moisture turns to ice before it hits the pavement. The streets of the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, known locally as Little Mogadishu, are eerily silent, save for the wind howling through the alleyways between the high-rise apartments. But inside, a fleet of blacked-out SUVs idling 3 blocks away. The tension is at a breaking point. 58 elite agents from the FBI, ICE, and the HHS Inspector General are checking their seals and gripping their weapons. They aren't here for a routine check. They are here to dismantle a billion-dollar criminal empire lurking in plain sight. The agents emerge from the vehicles, their breath visible in the freezing air. No sirens shatter the quiet, only the synchronized crunch of tactical boots on black ice. They stack at the door of a building labeled as a community daycare and refugee outreach center. On paper, it's a sanctuary for the vulnerable, a place of hope. In reality, it is the front door to a $19 billion black hole. The lead agent signals. The silence is shattered by the thunderous impact of a heavy-duty breaching ram. FBI, open the door, open the door. As the door splinters, alarms blare inside. Chaos erupts as high-intensity flashlights flood spaces that were once bustling with community outreach. But as the agents sweep the rooms, the horror sets in. There are no children. There are no cribs, no toys, no high chairs. Instead, the rooms are filled with rows of industrial-grade server racks humming frantically in the dark. This probe, ignited by public outrage over alleged Medicaid fraud, has just revealed a vast network leading to a shocking architect, Somali-born state senator Yasmin Farah.
A viral video appears to expose that alleged fraud at several Somali-operated childcare centers in Minneapolis.
To the public, Senator Farah was the ultimate refugee success story, a woman who rose from the camps to become the face of the new Minnesota. She was a barrier breaker, a rising star in the halls of power. But according to a sealed federal indictment, she was also the banker. As agents secure the perimeter, the refugee savior narrative is being ripped to shreds. Human trafficking and hidden horrors. If this level of betrayal and the theft of your tax dollars makes your blood boil, hit that like button right now. We are diving into evidence the establishment tried to bury for years, and the algorithms don't want you to see this. Comment Protect America below to help this investigation reach every patriot in this country. Your voice is the only thing the corrupt elite are afraid of. Do it now. Now, let's look at the death valley of this investigation. The moment this shifted from a financial crime to an active national security threat. Most people thought this was just about paper fraud. They were wrong.
Particularly within the Somali community. This has put those from that community in the spotlight.
As the tactical team moved into the senator's private conference area, they noticed something off about the wood paneling. A senior agent used a crowbar to pry back a section of the wall, revealing a hidden counting room. On a mahogany conference table, usually used for press briefings, sat 6 industrial-grade money-counting machines. Next to them were stacks of shrink-wrapped cash so dense they looked like bricks. But the most damning evidence was pinned to the wall, where a map of the voting district should have been. There was a complex diagram linking 27 different nonprofit organizations to a single offshore account in Djibouti. For months, President Donald Trump had been screaming about this. Most of the mainstream media dismissed his claims of $19 billion in fraud as hyperbole or xenophobia. They called it impossible. But as the agents used forensic drills to crack open the senator's private safe, they realized the president wasn't exaggerating. He might have been underestimating. Inside that safe, they found the master ledger. It wasn't just a book. It was a blueprint for the destruction of the American welfare system. It detailed a fraud network so vast and so automated that it siphoned nearly 20% of the state's entire welfare budget in just 3 years. To understand how you steal $19 billion, you have to understand the mechanism. The scheme was built on three pillars: the ghost patients, the fake clinics, and the political shield. But as the lead investigator reached the bottom of the safe, his face went pale. Underneath the stacks of ledgers and offshore bank tokens, he found a clear plastic bag. It didn't contain money. It contained thousands of small blue.
Our So Young Kim joining us now in studio. And So Young, you stopped by several daycare centers mentioned in that video to get their side of the story, and what were you told?
This was the turning point. This wasn't just about stealing your tax dollars to buy $5 million lakeside mansions. This was about funding a war. The $19 billion stolen from the American people wasn't just sitting in a bank. It was being used as the down payment for a massive shipment of cartel-supplied. The daycare wasn't just a front for money laundering. It was the regional headquarters for a distribution network poisoning the very streets the senator was sworn to protect. The rising star of Minnesota wasn't a politician at all. She was a high-ranking node in a global syndicate that connected Minneapolis to financial hubs in Nairobi, Dubai, and Mexico City. The fraud was the engine, but the fuel was death. As the sun began to rise over the frozen city, the FBI realized they hadn't just found a thief, they had found an invader funded by your own pockets. The daycare raid was only the first domino. To truly grasp the scale of the $19 billion hemorrhage, federal investigators had to map a maze of deception that crossed 3 continents. This was Operation Veil Lift, and it exposed a network that didn't just steal money, it built a parallel criminal economy fueled by your tax dollars. The digital forensics team hit pay dirt within hours of the breach. They discovered that the community daycare was the nerve center for what they called Pillar 1, the ghost clinics. While Senator Yasmin Farah was on television praising these centers as life-saving resources, a secondary tactical team was moving on the Somali Community Wellness Center in South Minneapolis.
There is a growing number of Minnesota daycares disputing allegations of fraud and empty buildings at their centers.
On paper, this single clinic was a powerhouse, billing Medicaid for over 5,000 patient visits every single week. They claimed to be providing intensive autism therapy and trauma counseling for refugee children. But when agents kicked down the door, the reality was sickening. They found a single room with 3 folding chairs and a dusty card table, no nurses, and 0 patients. The clinic was nothing more than a bot farm. Senator Farah's network had purchased the stolen identities of 80,000 immigrants from the dark web. Every night, while the city of Minneapolis slept, server racks in the back room would automatically generate thousands of fake invoices. Patient A, bill $400. Patient B, bill $1,200. These algorithms exploited a total lack of verification in a system where nearly 90% of certain families rely on state benefits. In just 2 years, these ghost clinics drained Minnesota's coffers by a staggering $78 million. But the money didn't stay in Minnesota. The paper trail led investigators to a terrifying discovery. The stolen Medicaid money was being used to purchase high-purity from the Sinaloa Cartel. That was then shipped back to the United States, hidden inside bags of basmati rice and flour destined for the very warehouses owned by the senator's nonprofit network. This brought investigators to Pillar 2, the political shield. Every time a state auditor tried to flag a suspicious spike in funds, Senator Farah launched a counteroffensive. She used the refugee savior narrative as a weapon, labeling any investigation a witch hunt designed to target the vulnerable. Seized records later revealed $50,000 advisory payments made to regulators to buy their silence.
Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis. You can see this child care center that has received millions of dollars in federal tax money over the past 6 years can't even spell learning right on its sign.
They weren't just stealing money. They were using your money to bribe the people meant to stop them. The senator would use her platform to call for equity and community protection, while behind the scenes, she was signing off on the next batch of illegal wire transfers. The tension reached a breaking point at 5:15 a.m. at an industrial warehouse in Burnsville. This was supposed to be a food distribution hub for the poor, but when the DEA's special response team breached the loading dock, they were hit with a chemical stench so potent it burned their eyes. It wasn't grain. Inside, they found thousands of vacuum-sealed bricks of stamped with the scorpion logo. This was the true return on the $19 billion investment. The logistics were perfect. Stolen government money went out, and deadly poison came back in, all under the guise of humanitarian aid. But the warehouse held a secret even darker than the in a fortified basement, behind a heavy coated steel door, agents found 47 Somali nationals. These weren't employees, they were hostages.
These Somalians have taken billions of dollars out of our country. They've taken billions and billions of dollars.
They had been trafficked into the U.S. under the guise of refugee resettlement sponsored by Farah's nonprofits. Once they arrived, their passports were seized, and they were told they owed a $50,000 travel debt. To pay it off, they were forced to package toxic no protection. If they complained, they were told their families back home would be executed. One file found on a locked computer chilled the agents to the bone, enrolled as ghost clients for welfare payouts, and then vanished into the cartel's drug distribution crews. The empire wasn't just stealing billions, it was running a modern-day slave plantation funded by the very welfare checks meant to help people. The rising star of Minnesota was actually a high-ranking node in a global syndicate, and the FBI was finally ready to pull the trigger on her entire world.
What happened in Minnesota where fraud was able to run rampant that it didn't in other states?
The evidence was undeniable. A sitting senator had turned the American dream into a $19 billion nightmare. The sunrise over Minnesota that morning didn't bring warmth. It brought a federal reckoning. While the media was still asleep, the political shield that had protected the most sophisticated fraud ring in American history was about to be pulverized. This is the final chapter of Operation Veil Lift. At exactly 7:14 a.m., FBI tactical units swarmed a $5 million lakeside mansion. On paper, this luxury estate was listed as a homeless shelter. In reality, it was the palace of a traitor. State Senator Yasmin Farah wasn't preparing a speech on equity when the flashbangs went off. She was frantically stuffing a suitcase with offshore bank tokens and gold bars. The image of her being led away in handcuffs, her face pale with the realization that her billion-dollar empire was gone, sent shockwaves through the Capitol. The indictments hit like a physical blow. 47 counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and trafficking facilitation. As she was escorted past media drones, she muttered no comment, but the evidence seized from her basement screamed the truth. Simultaneously, across the city, the dominoes were falling. 29 different locations were raided in a single hour. 47 satellite directors were tackled and zip-tied. In one morning alone, agents recovered $79 million in cold cash hidden in places you wouldn't believe. Inside false-bottomed cribs, behind industrial stoves, and stitched into the lining of prayer rugs. One intercepted call, recorded just minutes before her arrest, sealed her fate. An aide was heard whispering to a handler in Dubai, "The feds are through the perimeter, burn the ledgers," but they were too late.
I think open borders are great, where prisons are emptied into our country, right? Where people from all over the world being dumped into our country, the people that aren't wanted in their countries, by the way.
The master server was already in federal hands, revealing a digital map of every cent of that $19 billion. The fallout reached Washington instantly. Vindicated by the raid, the administration wasted no time. In a historic move, an executive order was signed announcing the immediate revocation of temporary protected status for the network's origin point. By January 2026, the process began to remove over 1,200 individuals directly tied to these fraud nodes. The message was deafening. If you come here to prey on the country that gave you sanctuary, your time is up. But the $19 billion wound in the American system won't heal quickly. This investigation proved that when compassion is blind, it gets robbed. It proved that political correctness was the most expensive line item in the budget, providing cover for a cartel-linked slave plantation. As the dust settles, the numbers are finally shifting. New AI-driven audits have already slashed ghost enrollments by 72%. Childcare waitlists for families who actually need help have shrunk by 40% now that the ghosts are gone. But the shadow remains. This is a warning to the elite. The American people are watching. Senator Farah faces life in prison, but she was just one node in a much larger machine. If you want us to keep exposing the networks the media is too afraid to touch, you must subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. We are currently investigating a massive, identical welfare fraud ring operating out of Ohio. If we reach 10,000 likes on this video, we release the Ohio files next. This is not the end. This is the beginning of the cleanup. Justice is finally coming.